Courtney, what do I?
No.
What is this list?
It's converted to a Google Doc. So open up the scroll down.
Just let me know.
Guys in your Google Docs.
You should probably give that to Jean to run the computer.
God. Education people at Google. That's a resident tech Word and
What'd she say?
Matt's our resident tech guy.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna be a good meeting. Here we go.
Oh my God.
All right, we all set?
Where we at?
All right, call this meeting of the Woburn School Committee to order. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would the superintendent please call the roll?
Mr. Austin. Present. Ms. Chisholm.
Here.
Ms. Cormier.
Present.
Ms. Crowley.
Je suis présent.
Mr. Morenin. Present. Ms. Wetzel.
Present.
Mr. Lipset.
Present. All right, we have approval of 4/9/24 minutes. Do I have any action?
Motion approved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
That brings us to public comment. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak to the committee this evening? Opening the floor for public comment. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak with us this evening? No? All right. Oh, all right. You come right on up here. So we are opening the floor to public comment. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed by Woburn Public Media. So by appearing at public comment, you are agreeing to have your statement broadcast. Please limit any remarks to no more than 3 minutes. And I ask that you refrain from any personal attacks directed at any staff member of the Woburn Public Schools. And if you could state your name and address.
Kurt Passini, 13 Myrtle Street, Woburn. Okay. So I don't know. I was just, my daughter's in first grade at the Malcolm White. She's in the IAP for speech. I ask her how her day goes at school and everything. And lately, she's been telling me that there's new students in there who don't speak English. And it's come so often that I reached out to the school. I never heard back, and then I talked to assistant superintendent. I'm assuming assistant superintendent. It was a woman who answered the phone, and she told me to come to one of these meetings to ask. So I was just wondering what was going on, because I contacted someone at the school who knows, and they just said there's Malcolm White does have a grown and diverse student population, but they cannot discuss the specifics of this or students. So it's kind of alarming, because there's no transparency. You're talking about redistricting, but I don't think any of the parents know that it's all getting overcrowded, But I'm assuming it's like that at all the schools. So she told me to come here to the school board, and I actually talked to somebody yesterday on the school board, and they said to call the state rep. And I called him, and he's saying it's federal and to come here again. So really no answers. I'm just wondering why there was no transparency in telling us what's going on at the schools. I feel like it's a parent's right to know what's going on there. And I don't know, I just feel like the young students are getting affected from in-class learning if it takes time away from them. And they're not moving residents, these people. They're staying at the hotels, but they're not permanent residents, they're not taxpayers. And it's not fair to the kids, and it's not fair to the teachers as well, And they're gonna be, I don't know. That's pretty much it, Just transparency, let the parents know what's going on in schools.
Okay, thank you. Just for your information, public comment is not meant to be a dialogue. It is meant for the public to express their thoughts to the committee. We actually can't respond, but thank you. If you'd like to leave your statement with Ms. McLeod so that it can be entered into the record, that would be great.
Sure. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Seeing none. City Council liaison to the school committee, Councilor Viola, thank you for joining us this evening. You have anything you would like to share? I appreciate your attendance. I also want to recognize Councilor Rob Toro. Do I have any other members of the council back there? Ward 5 Council? Okay. All right. We do not have our student rep this evening. That moves us on to reports and presentations of the superintendent and staff. Dr. Crowley.
Sure. So I think we're going to start with the elementary school improvement plan update. So let me pull that up and here we go. So I don't know the order, so you're going to have to organize yourselves.
I get to go first.
Yep. So Judy Mara, principal at Linscott Rumford.
Welcome.
Oh, look at them all. Here they come.
I was gonna say. Yeah.
These guys, huh?
We can rotate as we're each chair.
Musical chairs.
Yeah.
Yes. It actually feels like just a moment ago that we were here in the fall doing this, and now it's almost May, so it's hard to believe that we're here. So I'll talk a little bit about where we are with Goal 1. And just to refresh everyone's memory, Goal 1 is related to our use of the new district comprehensive literacy plan and using those elements for Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction and an effective MTSS multi-tiered system of support. And the ultimate goal with this is to increase our DIBEL scores by 5%. So in relation to that goal, we can go to the next slide. So the work that's been done related to this goal, we've really worked hard this year to strengthen Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction. Just to clarify, Tier 1 instruction is what's happening with all students in the classroom. Then Tier 2 instruction is that more targeted small group instruction that will happen either as part of our WIN, What I Need block, or our structured literacy routines where there's targeted small group instruction. And so in grades 1 and 2, we've been really continuing to work with Crafting Minds to practice and strengthen teacher instruction so that it's really targeted based on student needs. Grades 3 and K were kind of onboarded this year. Their training started last year, so they're getting up and going with the structured literacy routines and that targeted small group instruction. And then over the last few months, grades 4 and 5 are now being introduced to this. In relation to the data, one of the great things this year is we have access to MClass. MClass is the data system we're using to analyze our DIBELS data, and DIBELS is our literacy assessment. That gives us both a comprehensive score for all the different areas, but then it also gives us targeted scores based on the grade levels, whether it's phonics, phonemic awareness, letter ID. So there's different scores within DIBELS and allows us to target it. So that 5% is really looking at that comprehensive score for and looking at raising those scores. Across the principals, we've been using that data system both with our data meetings, and you'll hear a little more about this in our progress monitoring meetings, and we're all seeing that upward trend. So our students are really shifting in terms of improved reading instruction, and we're seeing that at this point in the data. Do you want to come over here so you can?
So Goal 1 and Goal 2 work so closely and in such concert together that as Dr. Mayer is talking, wait, hold on, that was my update. That's what I'm doing. So as you know, all of the goals that we have in our school improvement plans align closely with the strategic plan. And so Goal 2 also has to do with DIBELS and using MClass as the platform to record the data and how students are doing on their assessments. And this ties into deeper learning and effective instructional practices. And part of that is giving teachers time to collaborate together and knowing how important that is. So if you go to the next slide for the updates, We have now, at this point of the year, completed our data meetings for beginning of year and middle of year. And this is, I presented earlier in the year with one of my second grade teacher, Colleen O'Melia, and we talked about going to that dyslexia conference. And so I showed you the picture of all the people that are at that table, and we do those data meetings that are so important. It's our special educators, it's our reading specialist, it's our content specialist, our interventionists that support the WIN block for that small group instruction. So we all sit together and we analyze the DIBELS results, both the composite, like Dr. Mara was talking about, but at this point of the year, our teachers are well versed thanks to the leadership and the, building the capacity of our administrators in literacy instruction, as well as the content specialist and reading specialist, and we're able to go through and analyze the subtests as well. Not just knowing that this student is at benchmark, but within the individual subtests, how are they doing? And if they're not at benchmark, we're progress monitoring those students every 2 weeks. We're able to look at an aim line. The students have their own personal goals, and we're able to see if they're above and making ambitious growth, typical growth, or less than typical growth. And so those progress monitoring meetings are 6 weeks after an assessment window, so we can see if our current level of support and the current curriculum that we're using with those students in the small group in WIN is working, or if it's something that we need to change. And these meetings went from being 2 hours long when we first started last year to now we're able to cut down on sub-coverage because these meetings can be done in a half hour. The teachers know how to go into M-class. They've done their PLC meetings with the content specialist. They can tell, this is working for this student and why, and if it's not working for that student, we have enough people at the table with the experience in literacy to say, okay, it's not working, but this other group is working on this program that may be well suited for this student. And then we're able to keep on top of that every 2 weeks and do the progress monitoring. So it's really, really keeping on top of what they're doing. Like I mentioned, we're continuing the PLCs. That's when our grade level teachers get together with the content specialist and reading specialist to see how things are going. And then our teachers also have, because of our new contract this year, they also have after school 45 minutes a month to be able to work as a grade level team to tailor their instruction to their groups, both in WIN and then also their structured literacy groups that they're doing when all the students are back in the gen ed class. That's cool too.
Okay, so moving on, Dr. Mara and I, Dr. Mara and I worked together. We had a goal of increasing the capacity of teachers to utilize culturally responsive teaching. This has been, personally, I think that the teachers have been extremely receptive, and I think that it's been very impactful. It's hard to, I was reminiscing of times when I've talked about qualitative data, and Dr. John Wells is not here, but he would always challenge me on that. But qualitatively, we're looking at student engagement, we're looking at social skill development, we're looking at sense of belonging, and I can see that as I walk into the classrooms, and you can feel the energy. It's not data that we have just, Ms. Maloney just described, but it is still just as powerful data points. We have been using Responsive Classroom. I think it's an unbelievable addition. From K to 5, every single teacher starts their day with it. They also do midday, stop points. They can do closing meetings at the end, but right now, the morning meeting is what a wonderful day, a wonderful way to start their day. We have gotten the PTO involved as far as I have an amazing PTO. I think Dr. Mara does as well. I think in general all of us do, but we've really been working together and collaborating on getting some more diverse enrichment programs in, and seeing that sense of belonging of different subgroup, different populations of students and their connections has been wonderful. Again, using just the Remind and the translation possibilities through a Remind and Language Line, consistent communications with family. Language Line has been amazing and easy to use. We do still have that multilingual leaders program where we have some of the upper class students, 4th and 5th graders working. And you know what, to be honest, some kids said, hey, you know, as the weather's getting nicer, do you think that maybe instead of on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I could do just like Monday, Wednesday and use my research? Of course, you know, but then some kids actually want to increase their time. And it's been great because it started out as like a language need, but now it's building as more of a mentor and more of like a belonging kind of family feel. And then Dr. Mara, she just had last night her multicultural celebration, and she actually led a book group, and I will pass it to you if you want to.
Like musical chairs. So we have a faculty book group happening, and we're reading about multicultural learning and culturally responsive teaching and multilingual learners. And as part of that, we meet once a month to discuss it, and it really looks at those culturally responsive teaching practices, and in particular through the lens of our multilingual learners. That group actually planned a multicultural celebration last night, and they had happened actually prior to COVID, thanks to Dr. Riley when she was at the Linscott, but it hadn't happened in quite a few years, so it was great to see it get started again. It brings really a great sense of belonging, and one of the things I loved, you know, as Dr. Riley said, we all have wonderful PTOs, and we're also always looking to bring in other families, and through this multicultural celebration, you know, I noticed quite a few families who maybe haven't been involved in some other things, but were able to be a part of this, and this really connects closely with the faculty book group. The next step for my faculty book group in our May meeting, one of the things that teachers will be doing, there's a self-assessment to really look at culturally responsive teaching practices. So the teachers in our book group are going to be doing this self-assessment that we discussed in our April meeting, and then bringing it to the May meeting. And then the next step from there will be to look at then how do we bring this to the larger faculty. I have quite a big group. I have about 10 teachers already in this faculty book group, and we're also, you know, thinking ahead to what are the next steps and how do we bring this to the rest of the staff to impact students. And then ultimately, you know, as we move forward, although, you know, as we said, we're looking at qualitative data right now, you know, the goal will be then, the next step will be to look at the quantitative data and really digging into some of our subgroups to see, okay, are these practices having an impact on student learning? And so that will be kind of our next step as we look into next year. Musical chairs.
For goal 4, Mrs. Maloney and I have similar goals. It looks a little bit different at each school for the Harold Wyman and their RISE program, which is new this year, and our the GAIN program, which has been at the Goodyear. But both goals really focus on inclusion. They focus on kids accessing different parts of, you know, both the school and the classroom more regularly, and making our gen ed classroom instruction accessible for all learners is sort of the overall point there. So the Harold Wyman, I think there's bullets. Do you want to?
So at the Harold Wyman, this is the first year that the RISE program has been split, RISE 1 and RISE 2, RISE 2 being at Harold Wyman. And so we have been working with inclusion specialist Lucci this entire school year. So an update on this goal for us at this point, we've had Dot come in and do a staff meeting and talk about neurodivergence in the classroom and how to best service students in the inclusion model. She's come in and she's done observations in the RISE 2 program, in the resource room, and in the gen ed classrooms, and she's done interviews with all of our staff. And so at this point, we have about 40 staff members who have taken her survey that I created along with her to find out, you know, where the pockets of strength are and what have we done well this year, and then in thinking about a school improvement plan for next year, where do we need to go from here, and, you know, what kind of implications that'll have on, you know, staff needs and professional development, and what we can do to better serve our neurodivergent students, whether that's students in the RISE 2 program, students that are, you know, have an IEP or 504, ML students, and anyone who needs extra support in the classroom.
And at the Goodyear, a lot of our work has been done with consultation from the Triumph Center. So we've been working with George Marinakis and Emily Barry there. Weekly consults both with staff and with administration, as well as our consults weekly with our special education staff. And I think one of the big changes this year is systemically we have more consistent support, I think, from the top down, and that's really made an impact on our staff and on our students. So thank you to Courtney Young, to Maureen Ryan for helping to set that up, the special ed staff, and our GAIN staff. I really want to put the emphasis on them because they do the work. We ask a lot of them, and they've risen to the occasion all year long.
Ditto for the Bryce teams, yeah.
And one of the, a couple of the things that, we look at is the welcoming of 9 new students into the GAIN program. So we have 23 total students right now. We look at the classroom projects and the classroom community that are being done in each of the classrooms. There were a few back in the fall. The most recent that comes to mind is with the solar eclipse. Some of the classrooms did their own little projects there, but they also work collaboratively with the general ed classrooms as well. We're still phasing in the inclusive time in the gen ed rooms as much as possible. We have kids accessing our instruction, our literacy instruction, both in WIN and in the classrooms, and our assessments, more than not. And then when you look at our data when it comes to the use of restraints or timeouts, or other things like that, it's considerably gone down this year. We're able to intervene with more, lower level behavioral interventions, and those have been working. And again, that's a tribute to our staff and the planning that goes along with each student, and really keeping the classrooms a positive and good learning environment. That's it.
Yeah.
One of the Reeves goals is about the Playful Learning Institute, which is a DESE pilot program that we're running this year at the Reeves, where pre-K through 3, there are 2 classroom teachers in each grade who are using the Playful Learning Institute indicators and implementing that into their classrooms along with a coach that comes weekly to meet with all the staff. And it's been incredibly successful this year, both with students and staff. It's been a lot of fun, as the Playful Learning Institute should be. So some of the steps that we've taken this year, we have the weekly planning meetings with our PLI coach, ongoing assessments and feedback with the participants to make sure that some of the strategies are successful, how we can tweak them and best work with our students. Being able to use the grant funding that came with this opportunity to get supplies for the classrooms. For example, I was in an ECP classroom the other day, and they were doing one on light and darkness, and there's a section of the classroom with a bunch of bed sheets spread over to create a dark space, and they're putting shapes on top of the bed sheets and using light to try to guess what's on top. And that is just an example of how the curiosity and the engagement are used through PLI in the classroom. Meeting with the staff, we have a PLI indicator chart that has been developed from our coach, and we are slowly implementing that chart into the Woburn curriculum, so that instead of trying science lessons that are more through Boston public schools, we're able to use our own curriculum and embed the indicators. And it's been a success so far, and meeting with the staff, that is where we would like to take it, with a continuation grant that should be coming out shortly, as we would love to continue this. And the big takeaway here is how the staff feel about the indicators and using this program. And through a survey, which was part of our ending parts of this goal, a large portion of the staff want to continue, and that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
Hi. I'm here to talk about, at the Shamrock, Malcolm, White, and Alta Vista, one of our goals was for our after-school programs, working with the Boys and Girls Club to expand our after-school offerings. At the Shamrock, our After the Bell program has been free for a number of years, and now it's expanded out. And it looks pretty similar at the Alta Vista and the Shamrock. The Mountain White looks a little bit different. They have a different twist on their grant. But at this point in the year, our programs are going after school every day. We're running at full capacity. People are excited to get in. The Boys and Girls Club, Allison McDaniel, is wonderful about always finding room for a student that needs to be there. We start off with teacher recommendations, and those teacher recommendations really kind of almost fill the program, and then the other kids fill in around that. So it's an amazing program. They have fun, they enjoy it, there's time for homework, there's help there. It's a great way to expand our day for our needy students. I don't know, Mr. Anderson, we'll add in a little bit more about the, so the measurement that we use that's required by DESE is the SEO, which is the Survey of Academic Youth Outcomes. But that's a 2-point survey. It's a beginning and an end survey. So in talking with Allison McDaniel getting ready for this, she has last year's data, which is great. This year they've done their pre-assessment and they'll do a post-assessment middle to end of May. So what the Shamrock data showed last year, there wasn't one measurable outcome that our kids weren't, that hadn't improved in from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And this survey is done by the students, it's done by the staff in the program, and it's done by the school staff. So any teacher who has a student at After the Bell completes a SEO for them. So it's a great data collection point, and as always, I can't imagine the Shamrock without
Pause here for questions from the committee, if you're willing. Any questions? Ms. Crowley?
Oh, did you want,
No.
I just interrupt you?
You go ahead.
Oh, okay. Actually, I had a very basic question. I apologize for anyone. Or Courtney, what does Dibbles assess? I know that it's a reading assessment, but what areas of reading does it actually assess? Like what?
Yep, so it's different in, by grade level. Kindergarten and first grade, it starts with letter naming, and then it goes into individual sounds, and it goes into whole word sounds, and then it goes, progresses up into oral reading fluency. And then as you get into the older grades, we look primarily at oral reading fluency, and then we also do, it's not, I wouldn't say it's a full comprehension, but they call it like a closed assessment, which looks at vocabulary and comprehension in that way. It's one measure. We use a lot of measures in terms of looking at student progress. This is what we use as kind of our initial kind of catch-all data point. And I think that in each of their meetings, and especially in the progress monitoring meetings, is I think when you start to see a lot of conversation regarding kind of the whole comprehensive data set. But we talk primarily about Dibbles in part because it is our approved screener with DESE that we use as part of our early literacy screening tool, which we're required to do.
So what you're really targeting that letter naming, letter sounds, phonetic awareness part of reading.
Yes, it is all.
Okay.
It's phonics, phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, and kind of that spectrum as it progresses.
Thank you so much. I was just thinking about that. And I just had a question about the, I think it was Dr. Riley. You had, and maybe Dr. Mara too, you had taken initiative to develop more restorative practices, and I was just wondering if...
I didn't speak to that. Thank you. I don't know, I just skipped over that. So I've done a few trainings on just restorative justice and practices, so I started to use kind of restorative, I don't even want to use the word discipline, but it's just kind of like you're learning so much in school, but you're also learning how to interact socially with your peers. And so I think that at least 2 to 3 times a week, I will have almost a restorative circle. So if a student comes, I say, is it okay if I bring more students that you're speaking about in and we can all, and I just had one today actually, we were all sitting on the floor because I didn't have enough chairs. But it's super beneficial, and you know, the key is just being honest and vulnerable, and if you can teach these kids this at this age, then, you know, maybe they'll grow on to be positive adults in social situations.
Thank you. I was just wondering if you're seeing fewer office referrals, or if you have any anecdotal data.
I'm seeing fewer repeat office referrals with peer conflicts involved in. So I don't want to, you know, say that I'm seeing fewer in total.
Right.
But when I have these, I very rarely have the same kids coming back together. So I think it's working.
That's awesome. And Ms. Casares, you mentioned that you had fewer restraint in sort of more serious behavioral interventions, and so I just wanted to congratulate you. That's a considerable success.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I think that safety is number one all the time.
Yes.
So, it's a hard decision to make. It's a dynamic
Absolutely.
decision with a lot of moving parts. And again, it's our staff is very well trained, and they've been a good year for a long time. Most of them do. So I think that they're very aware of best practices to use in order to keep everyone safe and, you know, potentially harmful situations.
Yeah, thank you. And Ms. Ryan often talks about the success of the GAIN program, so that also speaks to the in-district initiatives, you know, to really keep kids safe during the school day. So thank you for that. And I think that's all the questions I had, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Wetzel.
Yes, hi. Excuse me. Thank you so much for coming. I remember when you came at the beginning of the school year, I was sitting on the opposite side, so it's nice to see you guys back again. And it sounds like you've done a lot of work, which is really fantastic. I did have a couple things. One, the question I had was on student goals and how we're monitoring the students closely for literacy. Is information also being sent home to parents so that way they can also reinforce what's being learned at school?
Yes, so information gets sent home to parents after the beginning of the year and middle of the year benchmarks with the information on where the student's scoring, and then for any students that are scoring in strategic or intensive need, there's also an invitation to come in and meet with school staff on how we can, you know, just so parents know that we're aware of that already and that there's already a plan in place to make them feel comfortable that we're on top of it.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. And then I really liked you talked a lot about social emotional support. I think that's just so important. If you don't feel safe and comfortable at school, it's really hard to learn anything. So I'm really glad that that's a focus that we're working towards. I really enjoyed, too, the neurodiversity talks that are happening at the Harold Wyman. I think it's wonderful for kids to learn as well from a professional about the other kids in their building. It's just a lot more acceptance can happen because of that. So I'd love to see that continue at all of our schools. I think it's wonderful. My oldest daughter actually is visually impaired, and she does a presentation at the beginning of the school year to her class about the different tools she uses, and it's empowering for her as a student, but it's also great for the other kids to see what she uses and why. So it's a really good learning opportunity, I think, for everybody. And lastly, the use of Remind. I've spoke with a lot of parents, and I think I've seen a significant increase in the use of the Remind, which is wonderful, especially as young as the preschool. A lot of communication has gone out through that, so I personally, as a parent, really like that, and I've heard from the community as well that it's been really well received, so thank you. And that's all I have.
Add to that, too, the great thing about Remind is for families, they can select the language, so it's making communication much easier with our multilingual families because we can reach out to a family, they're able to respond, and we can have a dialogue in that way. So it's pretty cool.
It's wonderful. I've noticed too, a lot of the flyers and stuff that have gone out too have all been in different languages as well, which I think is great. I think we're capturing a lot more of the community that way. Thank you.
Mrs. Chisholm.
On the Playful Learning Institute, what is the cost of that? I know it's a grant, but what would it be if we tried to do that for other schools?
Sure. So there are grants. There's another grant that's out right now for more schools to join.
Okay.
It doesn't cost anything. To my knowledge, it's more of a grant that's given to us. So it's funds that we can use to help get the supplies and the coach and everything needed to implement it in schools as a pilot. Okay. And then the continuation grant, I can't speak to because it hasn't come out yet, but I know that it is coming out shortly.
I can add to that too. So the curriculum itself is free. So the resources themselves are free. So, and I think we talked about this when it initially came, that one of the things that we liked about it was that for us to continue it into other buildings would not be of cost in terms of the curriculum or the resources. The cost would be in potential materials. But a lot of those are nice to haves, not need to have to do it. And so, and I will give Mr. Cummins a ton of credit, because this is quite a lift that he takes on with his building. And I think that it's been great to kind of see and get a really good perspective of kind of how much it would take to kind of do it in other buildings, and kind of what that would look like. But in terms of us, if we were to choose to have it to go to other schools, and I imagine the next step would be probably having individuals from the other buildings kind of go and see it a little bit, but it would be something that we certainly could extend at a minimal cost if we so chose.
Great.
It's really like practices and resources that layer on to existing. It's taking our existing, reading programming and adding in storytelling and roles and plays and kind of other things to it.
Right, so this year we use some of the BPS curriculum because that has already been adapted for the PLI indicators. So a big shout out to our staff who are doing it, because it's a lot of work.
Okay.
They have spent hours on this, hours and hours and hours. And I think
So it'll
from
be easier
that-
for everybody to steal their ideas then.
The reasons
Borrow.
for everyone else.
But through all of that, they've been able to really become comfortable with the practices and how to embed it in our current curriculum. So that's what our goal is for next year through continuation, is to kind of take all those practices that we feel comfortable doing now and lessen our coach coming to join and kind of have more of an independent and confident approach to it.
Good. It sounds like that it might be something that might be actually more fun for the kids too to get involved with. And also for the after-school programs and the before-school programs, and I know some parents are concerned with the redistricting, that we might lose things or not have equal things at every school, but that would be the goal for after-school programs at all of these schools. Goals, but will we be able to obtain that? And keep the after-school programs running at all of our elementary schools?
The ones we have currently,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Any additional questions for our elementary principals before we let them escape for the evening?
Can I
Yes.
make one comment? I just want to point out for a minute that with all of our students, we have almost 25% of our students identified as students with special needs. And in the elementary schools, when I listen to you all and I think about the programs that we have, and I think about GAIN and PALS and RISE 1 and RISE 2 and SOAR and the early childhood program. And we have a lot of students here in Woburn with some very unique needs. And I just want to thank all of you and point out that the special education teachers this year, I mean, we have certainly had staffing challenges, and I really believe our teachers have gone above and beyond and done a really, really nice job meeting the needs of these kids. And I also think that our general education teachers have equally welcomed these students, embraced the support of the many consultants that we have, and it's really made a difference. And I think, Kenny, you pointed out the reduction in restraints, and that really speaks volumes. The GAIN staff have really worked hard with the Triumph Center to embrace all of the different things that they're teaching them to work with our students differently, and I really believe that the students have benefited quite a bit through all of the leadership, and I don't think it's been a small lift. I think that all of our teachers have really done an incredible job, and it's just it's a big deal. It's important, and it really does make a difference for these kids. So thank you.
And I'm sorry to keep you, but Mrs. Chisholm.
Since it's budget time too, put you all on the hot spot, but we had building subs in our budget originally, and those have been taken off. I just want your opinion of how that will affect your buildings. And we will work, I'm sure they'll work to fill the spots as much as possible, but to know that someone was in your building every day, that you'd have an extra set of hands, how will that affect your planning?
I can speak for the Shamrock. There is very rarely a day goes by that we don't have someone out without a substitute. We have a really, because of our preschool program and our RISE program, we have a very high number of paraprofessionals. And so filling those paraprofessional jobs are really tough, and our staff go way above and beyond when they have to cover people get sick. I mean, it's going to happen. For me, I've always advocated for the building subs because I need highly trained people. So to walk into a RISE classroom, even a RISE 2 classroom, is not an easy ask of a substitute. So to have someone who's able and capable and someone we can work with each day consistently, so you're not seeing someone different each day. We're thrilled with the people who walk in our buildings every day. We can't make our schools run without our substitutes, but to be able to train some would be really helpful. I also understand the costs.
Okay.
And
We have 2 council members here too, so they can understand.
Yeah. And can I just add in aside, because you mentioned the budget. We're all doing different things in our school, as you see from our goals. But goals 1 and 2, with our comprehensive literacy plan and using MClass, to really watch our kids grow in reading. What I would ask, I think for all of us, is really your support around that plan and the people who put that in place every day. We are pulling kids along in reading, and it sounds crazy for me to say there is nothing more important than reading. That sounds like an opinion, but I think we can all kind of agree on it. I very rarely met a student who is a great reader and struggles in science or social studies. It's just reading is the cornerstone, and the reason we're seeing this growth is because of the great people doing that work every day. And so every great person that comes out of that job is that much more on our already very busy classroom teachers. So we get it done with what we have, but in order to see the growth we're seeing, you know, those positions that support goals 1 and 2 here are so important.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for that, Mr. Clark. But thank you all very much for coming in.
Yep. Again, thank you, and thanks you to all the staff who are doing this every day. I think you've all said that, and I think we all mean it, right? It's a busy place. We've talked about how education has changed recently over the past few years, and the supports that we're trying to offer our students and staff are real, and the work is endless, but you're doing a great job, and thank you very much for putting this together in really a short amount of time. So thank you.
Have a good night.
Tom's here.
I went home.
I
wore 2 ties. I actually drew the Celtics. I wore 2 ties.
And I was with him this morning, I'm looking for a second, and I was like, oh, 2 ties on.
That's fine.
Ladies make fun.
Yeah.
So we'll go in order. Mr. Qualey is representing the middle schools. Mr. Nelson's involved with the family wedding.
There you go.
Jump, you could have jumped that. Easy.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Oh, no.
Tried to get this in color, but the English color printer wasn't cooperating.
That's okay, save money.
Wow.
Yep. As long as it's black and white, it's good for me.
And there's a lot more room here up here without. All right, so the copy of the improvement plan you have, you'll see some check marks and stuff on it. I'll go through the stuff that we've already covered, the action items that we have. So the first goal was, seems like a common theme, to build on our reading levels through the use of additional skills classes, reading interventionists, as well as utilizing the newly implemented PLCs. So this is first year, the students are taking the STAR assessment in both reading and math. They take that fall,
winter, and then they'll do it again in June to try and gauge how they've gone. The teachers take that data, and our reading interventionist, she takes about 50 kids. She has 12 classes of about 3 to 5 kids, about 50 kids. So, and then when we do the new assessment in January, she'll see what kids have improved enough, and they may go back into the regular reading class or go back into their WIN blocks or whatever class they came out of to get the reading intervention. Some kids have stayed for the whole year, and then we also added kids in January for the second half of the year. And a lot of the kids are showing improvements. Some of the kids didn't want to leave the class, and they were a little upset by it. I told them they got to make room for others. So the reading interventionist has been a blessing for us at the school this year, and have done a great job. We also include adding the reading interventionist, our 2 reading teachers. They generally took the lower reading students and gave them some extra intervention as well. But now, since the interventionist took those kids, they are taking the kids who are very, very close to meeting expectations on the MCAS. So the kids who were kind of, I don't want to say lost in the shuffle, but weren't getting the extra are now getting the extra. And we'll see how that goes in another couple months. All right, so they'll take the STAR assessment. The students needing intervention, like I said, they're mixed in, so those were all done. 7th and 8th grade students not meeting expectations who weren't getting the extra intervention, they were placed in that extra reading class, and that came out of an SSR, so they weren't losing any specials for this extra thing. So the kids didn't complain too much about getting extra reading, which is nice. And finally, with the PLCs, the teachers are all meeting with their counterparts, with their curriculum coordinators. They're reviewing data, and they're also planning lessons and units going forward and so forth. So pretty much every action plan has been done. We've just got to wait to do the final assessments in early June. All right. Improvement goal number 2, this is both mine and the Kennedys. We're working with the Department of Ed's Literacy Inclusion Instruction Academy, and one of the main goals is creating the PLC structure within our schools, which so far has been off to a very good start. Took a little while getting going, getting used to it and so forth, but we've attended some monthly trainings, both me and my assistant principal, as well as some of the reading teachers that have come in as well. We provided professional development to the whole staff. We did a UDL refresher course at the beginning of the year. We've created a PLC meeting schedule where they're meeting a couple times a month. And with the monthly PLCs, they're doing the data analysis and the lesson planning portion of that. So the plan is to bring more PD into the staff next year as we go on and build on this, what we've created so far this year. School improvement goal number 3, which was to work on reducing our chronically absent students by 15%. This is our hardest goal. We're finding more and more kids staying home. And this is a tough one. We're right around the percentage we want to be at. There's chronically absent is at 90% or less. So if somebody's 89%, they're chronically absent with the attendance rate. So right now we have about 25 kids who are between 88 and 92. So those are the kids we really got to work on keeping them in, or getting them into school. It generally gets better in the spring after the winter sometimes if it's raining or if it's a threat of a snowstorm that turns to rain, the kids still don't come to school. So it's been a challenge, but we've worked with the parents, we've worked with the court system, we have CRAs on more students that we've ever had before. Mr. Mills is constantly having court dates on Zoom in his office with the judges, and they actually bring lawyers in and so forth. And So we've got that on 6 different kids. We have our SROs going to homes, picking up kids, getting them to school. So we're doing everything to get them in. We send letters to the parents. We've had families come in to see what we can do to help them. And this is the biggest challenge. And where the absenteeism has gone in the last 6 years, it's mind-boggling on how many more kids are chronically absent. That's not just a Woburn problem. It's happening everywhere. And the final improvement goal was to work on the school culture of culture building activities and events throughout the year. We have kindness and respect enrichment programs. We had one in the fall. We're working on getting something in the spring. Part of that, we also did a whole kindness week. We got some activities, and every day we had a different random act of kindness thing that the student council ran. We have our character court. It's in our main lobby. We have a character trait of the month, and right now it's tolerance. So the kids got to learn to tolerate other kids, and I got to learn to tolerate everybody. It's getting that time of the year. But anyway, so each month we have 13 kids nominated by their team teachers. So each team nominates 2 students, and we also have students in substantially separate programs. We have 1 student from those 3 programs. They rotate each month on who gets to choose one. And the kids, they get a certificate. They're posted on the wall in the lobby. They're put on a video board and a newsletter and so forth. And the kids really like getting it. And sometimes I have to give definitions a little bit more clearer for the students on what each character trait means. But we posted up there from the read, and it seems to be going pretty well. And finally, the charitable giving to benefit our students and the community throughout the school year. We do various events to help our students as well as students far from here. Like one of the things we have, we raise money for the Pulsera project. This year we gave them $1,500. It helps Central American students get support in schools as well as Central American artists. We've donated over $3,000 in holiday giving to our students or families in need. We've given out probably over $1,000 in gift cards to Market Basket. Our Joyce Exchange, which was featured on WBZ, is we've got kids coming down weekly saying, "Can I go to the store and go shopping?" I mean, the need is there for a lot of these kids, and we've given away a lot there as well. So that is it.
Thank you very much. You willing to field some questions?
No, I'm good. I was ready to look over here.
Yeah, I know, I was going to say.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Crowley? Ms. Crowley?
More of like just a comment that the ongoing chronic absenteeism, it's not just impacting Woburn, obviously, it's a huge problem that I see in my work. And I think the biggest problem with it is that there's no one cause. We know that it got worse during COVID, but it seems to be related to some mental health issues, some medical issues, and then there's just straight up willful defiance that is usually not the most pressing issue. But I wanted to acknowledge that it's a difficult and complicated task, and I was just wondering if there's any additional staffing or resources that the middle schools might need to combat this issue, or family engagement needs to increase?
Our guidance department, and Mr. Mills especially, I mean, they reach out to families and get the families in, and some of the families, they come in, some of them, they're at their wit's end as well. They're trying to get the kid out of bed, and that's when we send the SRO over, and it usually gets brought into the school sometimes.
Yeah.
But there's sometimes a kid will refuse to get out of bed.
It's complex.
Mhm.
Anyways, I just wanted to acknowledge that, and thank you for making it a goal and trying to tackle it, because it's a serious problem. So, thank you.
Any additional questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Colin also wanted me to do his for him. Everything Tom said.
Well, Carl did great.
Thank you.
So Mr. Rassanen, principal at Woburn Memorial High School, is up next.
Everybody. There you go.
All set.
Yeah.
So before I get into the specifics of the goals, just a couple things I wanted to highlight first, just in terms of what's been going on at the high school. Just in terms of general updates, that way we can see it on the screen. We are neck deep in the scheduling process. Our counseling department has been working extremely hard to get that process done so we can determine section needs and schedules for teachers and students. We're in the second year of adopting Power School, so there's a pretty significant learning curve for everybody. A lot of things were pushed to the Power School portal, and the goal is to move fully there next year, but they've done a really fantastic job of managing that process. And I want to highlight a couple things specifically. Our science team finished 4th out of 12 schools, so they got a trophy for the first time, so that's a pretty significant accomplishment. Our math team qualified for the highest division. Spring sports are in full swing. Our senior internships, we have, I think, over 150 seniors doing senior internships this year, and Ed McGuire is doing a good job running that. This Friday, we have 14 kids going to DECA Nationals that qualified in California. Mock trial, we had our first year of mock trial. They seemed to take a lot of schools by surprise. And I think we've talked about it a little bit, but our alternative ed program is in the midst of a semester 2 expansion, and they're doing a really, really good job with that. So I just wanted to highlight a few things that we have going on that are tangentially related to our school improvement plan, but I think are important to highlight. And when it comes to things that are going on and specifically related to the school improvement plan, you know, we have the district's TFM report from DESE. For the high school, we have our NEASC accreditation 5-year report that's due on June 1st, which I'll talk about in a minute. And there are some challenges ahead, and these reports are going to inform a lot of the things that we're going to do for next year. They're going to inform how we look at our school improvement goals. And I think it's important to highlight that as you know, I'm learning how the high school works and getting to know folks and working on building relationships through some of the structures that are listed up there with our TLT and our ILT and regular check-ins with the union folks and different things. There's, you know, the two things that we've been, you know, recommendations, I use that term loosely because they're very strong recommendations, are going to inform a lot of the work that we are being asked to do as we look towards next year. I presented the corrective action plan to faculty at a faculty meeting, and what I told everyone, and I think it's important again to point out here, is that it's going to be a challenge, and I think instructionally, when you look at the high school and you look at the job that teachers are asked to do, it's getting harder. You know, our high needs population is increasing, and support for teachers can't just be, here's a list of strategies, best of luck, I'll see you in June. We're looking at things structurally, and we're looking at things systematically, and some of the things that we're looking at are bringing back department heads to the high school and bringing more to our instructional leadership team so that department heads and coordinators can work closely together to provide that additional layer of support to teachers. And I'm really excited about having an instructional leadership team that can provide that layer of, on the ground, in building instructional support to teachers to help accomplish some of the goals that we are setting. We're also advocating for an ML coach to help us next year, and working on expanding the number of co-taught special education sections that we have, so that that's an additional layer of support for our students. And the next slide that's up there are the recommendations that are given to us from NEASC, and I put this in here because this report is due on June 1st, and accreditation hinges on how we do in regards to this. And I put this up here just for posterity because our school improvement goal number 1 speaks pretty clearly to NEAS recommendation number 1. And so everything is tied together, pretty clearly. And so between TFM, we've got our marching orders, and we're going to proceed as we need to. NEASC, the accreditation process, this is our 5-year report. So 5 years ago, accreditation came out. There were a lot of commendations. There was a lot of good work done by the committees that were in place at that point. And there were the 4 recommendations that you see here. So instructional practices need to be adjusted according to recommendation number 1. 2 and 3 speak to rubrics and the work that was started prior to COVID, shutting everything down, were around rubrics and grading expectations on a department level. And then recommendation number 4 is up there and is pretty self-explanatory. So I bring all this up to just kind of highlight what is guiding the way that we look at our school improvement goals, and what's going to be guiding the way that we look at our instructional and structural practices next year. So the next slide gets into school improvement goal number 1, which is around increasing our application of deeper learning and effective instructional practices, which is a district strategic goal. And it's, as I mentioned, it addresses our first NEAS recommendation. And we were doing a lot of this stuff early in the year through walkthroughs and just kind of seeing what was going on in classrooms, highlighting a lot of the good work that teachers were doing. And that's been paused due to scheduling and a lot of the stuff that's been coming out, and just being able to use a lot of the structures we have to analyze the reports, and those will pick up shortly. And then we will pick up measuring that and really looking at, was this goal achieved? This goal, I think, in my opinion, is ongoing. I think we're always looking to improve practice. I mean, that's just kind of, I think, the nature of the business. We're always looking to do the best we can for students, and improvement is always the goal. So, goal number 1 is ongoing. I won't say it's completed, but we're making progress, and I think being able to bring in some of the supports structurally, bring in some of the supports instructionally for teachers, and also just highlighting the fact that a lot of these things are already happening. There are teachers doing really excellent things in the classrooms, and being able to point that out and highlight that, and highlight best practices for everybody, and is going to be a big part of this process. Goal number 2 is around our MTSS process and developing tier 1 and 2 structures as part of that process that ensure that students are safe, supported, social, emotionally, culturally, linguistically, and academically by June of this year. This is also ongoing. We have our DCAP. We have our system that we're going to use for this. We have, with open architecture, the dashboards we're going to be using. They have something called the Student Companion, which encapsulates all of that data and puts it in a platform that you can use to analyze data and see which students need which interventions, and gives you a place to drive those interventions. And then continuing the action steps of advisory, of our implicit bias training, and some of the other things we're going, as well as just continuing our IST process with this goal. And then goal number 3, basically a new schedule, and we are gathered a lot of feedback, a lot of data from teachers. There was a survey that went out. We had 92 teachers respond to that in terms of basically what did you want from a schedule, because there are 70 million iterations of school bell schedules. And so looking at what people wanted, and I'll show you that on the next slide. But this was something where we worked really closely with our building level union leadership, and we met with them and we had a really good draft and a productive conversation. But the recommendation was, which I think is a really good one, that we should take next year as an implementation year and make sure that contractually things are in place. There's no gray areas, there's no vagueness, that we're where we need to be, and that we can involve as many stakeholders as we need to, because the point was made, which is a really good one, that changing something like a bell schedule isn't something that you need to rush into or you should rush into. This has been seemingly a long process. There's been talk of a new bell schedule for quite a while. I've surveyed people that have been there for 1-2 decades, and as long as people have been there, that's as long as they've heard about a new schedule. So we're going to take next year and really do it properly. And so the next slide is just a sample of what teachers have said that they are looking for. So the really early draft is, I guess you could call it a hybrid waterfall. Folks have said, it ranged anywhere from, 45-minute classes to science teachers wanted 80 to 90-minute classes, which would be a long time for a lot of folks, but science teachers love labs, so we're going somewhere in the middle, most likely. And then what teachers are really interested in having are common planning time and smaller class sizes, and seeing their classes every day, and intervention time for students. So these are some of the things that we are taking into account as we look towards the new bell schedule. And then the final piece are just other considerations. I think looking at these school improvement plans, or these school improvement goals, we are also working to build out our Tier 3 interventions. There was talk about the GAIN program. Our GAIN program is, I think, also really strong. I think entirely due to the teachers and the paras that are in that program. We started the year with 19 students in GAIN. We're up to 35. So it's a really small but clear example of the level of need that we're seeing from students. But it's a really high functioning program, and the students are doing really well in that program. I think our alternative education program is another example of a Tier 3 intervention that's really doing well and that we're looking to expand. And looking at this year as a year of synthesizing all of the information we're getting, building out systems and structures, and involving teachers and students and parents, and just making sure that we've got systems and structures that can support implementation that we need to accomplish the goals that, in some cases are being set for us.
Any questions for Mr. Rassman? Mrs. Chisholm.
It's a question, concern, or whatever, but we never approved the DECA trip.
I think Ms. Keenan came.
But to California, we approved the Boston one. We didn't, because we have students going to California. Is that what I heard? 14 students?
Mm-hmm.
We never approved that.
Our understanding is, in sort of reviewing this, that competitions are exempt from what we need to approve. And as DECA is a competition, it would fall under that.
Overnight, out of state, we have to
Including
approve.
those. Okay.
So, I mean, we can, can't say no now, but, I mean, if we could get some sort of, just a fly, we can vote on it tonight and approve it, but if we get some background, you know, where they're going, what days they're missing from school, how many chaperones are going, what they, just so we can do it, but this should have been approved before this was done.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'll make a motion that we approve the trip, you know, and just get that to us so we can get the information. But any trip out of state overnight, we do have to approve.
I'm not actually sure, because I think it would be the same concept as a sports team that goes out of state. But I'll go along with it. I'm just not sure if the letter of our policy actually requires that, and maybe that's why admin didn't bring it to us.
So,
Yeah.
we will vote on this and then also make sure that we're clear on the policy
Right.
Yeah.
as we go into next year.
It's always a.
We did have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
just so, you know, to be perfectly clear.
And this was,
Yeah.
I just sort of double checked this with various sources, and I think that's
Yeah.
sort of the consensus. But we should certainly go ahead with the vote and go from there.
Yeah.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of approving the DECA trip, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And yeah, additional documentation would be great either way. It's
It just-
good to know if the students are okay.
And on the program of studies, I know we got a list of classes that were going to be added to this year. Was there enthusiasm for that? Did that?
Yeah, a lot of them are very popular.
Okay. Is that going to be any change in staff requirements?
No.
It could do with what we have? All right.
Okay. Ms. Watson?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I had a question. I love the idea of the co-taught special education classes. I think it's wonderful to have that additional support in there. Would we need more teachers for that, or do we currently have staff that would be able to do that function as well as what they're currently doing?
We're going to make do with arranging scheduling and reallocation. If you're offering, we will take more. But we're going to try to rebalance some things and do some shifting to just offer as much as we can currently.
But it would be helpful if there were more then?
It would be extremely helpful.
Got it. And I really like the new bell schedule. I think it's great that you got feedback from that before implementing it and are really taking the time to do it. I think that's wonderful. And I just had a question. The behavior coordinator role that we were looking at, has that position started, or
Yeah,
it has?
yeah.
And is that helping out? Have you noticed with behavior at the school?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's definitely a learning curve, and I think there's, I need to do some work in terms of making sure that teachers understand how this role interacts with them and how they can get a hold of him as needed. But he's currently managing entry and tardies in the morning and supervising lunch and chasing kids in hallways all day long. He's busy as our assistant principals.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Any additional? I'm sorry, Ms. Wetzel, you were all set. Right?
I am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Cormier, go ahead.
Thank you. Can you speak more to the rationale for the bell schedule change and what kind of brought that up and what the benefits are?
Yeah, so besides having it be something that's been talked about for a long time, I think teachers are looking for more instructional time. Because right now our periods are 48 minutes, 49 minutes long, and it feels rushed. And I think adding in some flexibility with an intervention block and being able to have that common planning time together so that teachers can collaborate is also really important. So those are just a few of the things that I think we're hoping to accomplish with that.
Great. And I did meet is it behavior coordinator? Is that the official?
School culture specialist.
School culture specialist. Saw him in action a few weeks ago. Fantastic, really friendly, and just excited to have him on board.
Ms. Wright.
Can I add that so I spoke a little bit about the elementary, and at the secondary level, both the middle and high school, I think our programs especially have worked hard. The game program, for example, this year has grown significantly. It's the first year that it's been in place, and it's worked very, very well. They've worked closely with the consultant, and I think all of the staff at the high school have done a nice job with the students. And I think the same for the alternative staff. They've also worked really hard. At the high school, we are working to realign some programs for next year so that the continuum through the levels is a little bit more consistent. And we are working a bit with some of the staffing models so that we can make some changes for next year. And I think, again, there have been staffing challenges this year, and I think our teachers have gone above and beyond. I think our paraprofessionals have also really stepped in to help out with some of the staffing challenges, and they've really done a nice job.
Yeah. And I think the same could be said of the teachers and paras in our transitional ed program too.
Yes.
It was, not an easy start to the year, but.
I actually specifically am thinking of that
Yeah,
program
but
as well.
they've,
With some of the staffing, I think
Yeah.
they've really done a nice job.
They've, that program is growing as well, and they've done a marvelous job too.
Mr. Morano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could just speak a little bit, I know it's different from previous years, but the senior internships, kind of like what the students are into, where they're going, what they're doing, the times they're putting into it, and what the progress at the end of that day, at the end of their internships will bring them.
Yeah, so there are a lot of self-proposed internships based on interest from what kids want to do post-secondary, but we have a lot of students, I don't know what exactly the number is, but doing the ed internship, and I should have asked, I don't know if the elementary principals can speak to it, since they're here, but we have some of our seniors at the elementary schools working with some of those kids, which I've heard is really working phenomenally. Ed McGuire, one of our assistant principals, manages that, and so he's actually been out at the site and doing troubleshooting. And, for students that are interested in pursuing careers as teachers, it's a great way to give them exposure to it and give our elementary schools bodies, which is always, always helpful, I think. So, but there's a ton of different experiences that students are doing, and a ton of different outcomes that they're looking for and they're accomplishing. So it's a really good program.
I know it was successful in the past, and there's been some tweaks to it, but I'm glad to see it's still ongoing at the high school, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
And Ms. Wessel.
I just wanted to add, I actually ran into Brandon, our school community rep for the students, and he is interning at City Hall in the mayor's office and loving it, had a really great time. We spoke for quite a while, actually, about his experience, and it's been wonderful.
Yeah, he's very excited. I couldn't think of a better place for him.
Yeah, he was very jazzed when I talked to him.
Any additional from Mr. Espin? Ms. Chisholm.
Just real quick, the handbook, any changes to that this year? We're in the middle of budget season, but that we need to approve that too.
Yeah, we're working on some,
Okay.
yeah. I've asked our teacher leadership team to look at specifically around like code of conduct and student discipline, just to make sure things are clear and transparent.
All right, then get to us so we can just approve it for you. So, and then I just, I heard today that there's going to be another graduation requirement that they're going to put in for any students that are going to be going to college. They have to fill out the federal loan program. Yeah, and they have to make sure that that's completed before graduation. So it's like maybe they're realizing that kids are signing up for loans that they can't afford to pay back ever.
Yeah. They're having a decrease in the number of students that are filling it out.
Yeah.
So they're probably going to make everyone fill it out.
So it's going to be another thing guidance probably will have to chase kids for. So but I heard that today, I'm like, wow, amazing. So maybe they can all just say they're not going to college and go.
I haven't heard that yet.
Yeah.
I haven't either.
Yeah.
I don't think.
It was on the TV tonight.
I mean, I don't think our counselors need another
job to do, yeah.
But
Yeah. I'm like, it's crazy, but well, there you go.
Question.
Yeah, Ms. Ross.
Google.
In the past, one of our meetings, we talked about paras being able to take advantage of going to the college for free to become a teacher. Has that been implemented? Have paras taken advantage?
I know we have a couple that have enrolled in school and are looking to pursue that. I can't speak to the ins and outs of the program itself, but I know at the high school we have a few that are actively pursuing their bachelor's degrees.
Okay, nice.
I can actually, there's a grant through William James College where we are offering paraprofessionals either a free associate's degree, or if they have an associate's, a free bachelor's degree. And we have held some informational sessions, and we've had some paraprofessionals that have expressed interest. And I'm actually meeting with William James next week to talk some more about it. I don't have specific numbers in terms of how many people are actually enrolling and opting to move forward, but we did have some people that expressed interest and have joined us for sessions to learn more about the program. And if they decide to take advantage, they would start in the fall.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any additionals for Mr. Rasmussen? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Rasmussen. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that brings us to our redistricting updates. Dr. Crowley?
Sure. So before I get started, I have created an FAQ slide deck, in large part in response to the conversation that the committee had at the last meeting. And I remember Ms. Wetzel saying it'd be helpful to have like a quote one-pager kind of thing. So I tried a one-pager, and I found it really hard to get everything onto one page. And so the FAQ seemed like the next best option. And so what we did, I say we because I worked with Mr. Lipset a little bit on this, is to take the most frequently asked questions. I'll go through the FAQ now, and then I'll push this out as a document tomorrow to everybody via Remind, and I'll also have it posted to our website so that everybody has the information in a timely manner. But that's, again, in response to some of the questions that came up at the last meeting, and felt like this might be the best way to tackle that, because there are many questions, and we candidly still don't have some of the answers, but we'll. So 10, this is like David Letterman, the top, 10 top. No, the most commonly asked question, what is redistricting? Why are the boundary changes being considered? What is the timeline for this process? Will I have a chance to express my thoughts about the scenarios to the school committee? When will I know my students' assignment for next year? When will the new boundaries become effective? What criteria does the school committee use to evaluate the new boundaries? How will transportation of students be affected by redistricting? We live closer to a particular school. Why doesn't my child attend the closest school to my residence? And is there any additional information that I can look at? And so those were the 10 most common questions that we tried to answer, or I tried to answer. And I'm going to go through, I'm not going to read verbatim because everyone is going to get this tomorrow. But what is redistricting? Essentially, it's redrawing the neighborhood school district boundaries to equitably distribute students to our schools. And then it allows for us to best utilize our facilities and support our programming. In the foreseeable future, what we've talked about with the consultant is a minimum of 10 years, making a decision that can last for 10 years at least. The last time the Woburn Public Schools was redistricted was in the 1980s. I was going to put 1989, but I didn't want to say exact date. But so it's been quite a while since redistricting has occurred, and the city has changed quite a bit since then. I'm including here, this is the current district map, and so I don't know how often people look at these things, but you can see it's color-coded, predicated. This is the elementary district map, and so North Woburn, this all here is the Alta Vista, the Linscott, Rumford, the Harold Wyman, kind of on the other side. Clearly, they used 128 as the through line when they redistricted. The Goodyear actually is, we know this, but when they closed the clap, some of the students here go to the Goodyear, they drive by the Shamrock, and then the Reeves is on here on the west side. So that's our current map, and this is what the consultants requested, and this is what they're going to work from. They're also going to look at our middle schools, and this is our middle school map, which is drawn. As you can see, it looks pretty much like they went right down 38 when they made that decision years ago. And so, why are changes being considered? Really increased enrollment at our elementary schools is the driving factor here. The current issues are at the Malcolm White, the Harold Wyman, and the Goodyear Elementary School. Each of these schools has done a variety of different innovative things. However, it's not sustainable. It's not good practice to kind of keep doing these Band-Aid approaches when we know we actually have space in other elementary schools. Since September of '23, this September, we've enrolled 335 students, approximately 8% more students. So we keep talking about this, and I actually think this number's higher. I think it's 350, if I'm not mistaken. We just checked it about an hour before coming into the meeting tonight. 353. So, and I did this just a few days ago, so that's how quickly things are changing. This is the same question continued. The increased population has led to need additional spaces so we can continue to focus on art, music, library, health, and the individual student needs that people and students have. We need to support our multilingual learners for instruction, the social emotional needs that our kids have with sensory rooms, and special ed programming to reduce the student-teacher ratio, require substantially separate classrooms, and provide more specialized programming in districts. You heard it tonight throughout. The GAIN program is successful at all levels, and we need to continue to support our specialized programming. It says on the, I wrote it, but it's the Woburn Public Schools is not overcrowded. It's out of classroom space at a few different places. So again, we need to redistrict with the idea of being more efficient with our space. We also split elementary schools when they head to the middle schools, and one of the goals of the redistricting would be to look at the middle school lines as well to allow for the grade 5 students to come to the middle schools together. Just some pictures. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. The teacher workroom at the Harold Wyman, as Dr. Kent is now her office. There's curtains for privacy, but there's no door. The Harold Wyman art room, which is brand new, obviously, has been repurposed to the Rise 2. The Goodyear Library is a music room, and some of the spaces in the Goodyear and the hallway are being used for pull-out instruction. And so, again, the Malcolm White has similar capacity issues. But I just thought I'd highlight some physical space issues that are faced every day. So our timeline, and actually, spoiler alert, at the end of this slides is a link to this the presentation that Ms. Crowley did that gave the timeline from like 21, I believe, and walks everybody through all of that. This is just the redistricting timeline. As you know, we selected a consultant in March, just a couple weeks ago. We have sent everything to the consultant. I expect the committee to get something this week from the consultant. I spoke with him on Saturday. I fully expect you to have some options this week. And so, and then that will give you time to look at and start beginning to digest what the ostensible scenarios are for redistricting. The school committee at some point will take a vote on redistricting. I said mid-May because that's the timeline that we had previously been discussing. And then predicated on that vote, family notifications would go out as soon as possible. If we can tell people in May, we would. But we had said early June in previous meetings. Will I have a chance to express my thoughts about the redistricting scenarios to the school committee? Absolutely. The school committee wants to hear your voice. I don't know if you want to talk about this at all, Mr. Lipset?
Sure. So we've talked about a lot of different options in terms of how to allow the community to express thoughts, to provide feedback, to suggest alternatives. And that has happened. We've had a lot of public input on this process already, and I both hope and expect that that will continue. We are talking about how to build in public forums to learn about the options that are presented, and to be able to provide feedback at those sessions. We're currently working to schedule budget votes as well, and so we can't provide an exact schedule at this moment on when those public hearings will be or public forums will be, but we hope to get that information fairly soon. In the meantime, people are always welcome to submit comments to me through email. We'll just point out we should change my email address up there to Andrew Lipset.
Sorry.
Yeah, I actually think a Lipset does redirect, but Andrew Lipset at WoBurnPS.com. And when we do schedule a meeting for a vote, and certainly at any meeting, the public is welcome to come and voice their thoughts, voice their concerns on this process. This is a process that is going to affect a lot of families. We are well aware of that. And so we want to make sure that the public doesn't just know that they can voice their views, but feels that those views are being invited. We want to hear from people. We want to hear from the public. We want to hear from families for a variety of reasons. But it helps us come to our decision as well. So any of these are options for that, and as soon as we have more information on public forums, we will push that out.
Again, when will I know my student's school assignment? This is repetitive to a little bit, but this seemed to be a theme that was prevalent. As soon as we know, we'll tell you. We thought early June, and if it is in May, we'll let folks know in May, and every attempt will be made so that students that are affected will have an opportunity to visit the school this year before school ends, so that they can see physically where they would be, classroom space, meet teachers, et cetera, et cetera. So we will work to make that a reality if that's in fact where we land. The new boundaries, if voted, would take effect in August of 2024. The transportation, this is an internal thing for us to figure out, predicated on where the boundaries are drawn. We do use Bus Rights app so that we can create bus routes, again, predicated on where kids live and pickup times and so forth, but that's something internal. We don't expect any impact on students or families as it relates to transportation, but our intent is to make sure that we will communicate the transportation plan well in advance of the school year. We live closer to a particular school, and why doesn't my child attend the closest school to my residence? Every effort will be made to assign students to the school nearest their home school, creating that neighborhood school. Sometimes that's not always possible, predicated on programming or different factors at schools, but we understand and recognize that being across the street from a school and then going somewhere else doesn't make a lot of sense. So again, I would suggest that the school committee would be taking that into consideration as they make a choice. And this is the spoiler alert. Is there any additional information that I could look at? This is the PowerPoint presentation that Ms. Crowley had put together. So when people get this, there's a link to it. And with her presentation here, which outlined the sort of the space capacity issues that we've been working through over the past few years. And so with that, let me next steps. I fully expect to be able to provide something to you this week from the consultant that hopefully will outline some of the scenarios. And then I think the committee would then need to schedule a meeting to review what these options look like and feel like, and begin having conversations about that. So, again, the intent is to put this, it is in an FAQ. I just took the FAQ and put it into slides, but I'll share it all out with everybody tomorrow.
And before I open for questions, I just want to take a moment to thank Dr. Crowley. This was a lot of work and a lot of effort to pull together all of this information, to put it into an easily readable format, and this was a project that he took on, and I deeply appreciate that. Do we have any questions beginning on this document? And we're going to move into some other stuff. Ms. Watson.
I just want to say thank you as well. Really appreciate it. I've had a lot of people come up with questions, and this will be really helpful to drive them back to this document to answer those questions. So very, very much appreciated. I think this is very beneficial.
Good. Well, I'm supported. I don't do this work alone.
Well, thank you to you and the team.
Mr. Moran.
Thank you. If I could, to the superintendent, obviously, just like you said, you're not doing this alone. Maybe you just highlight the other agencies and stakeholders that are involved here. I know the previous meeting you talked about the engineering department, bus companies, other, it's a project, you're getting recognized for it. But what other agencies and departments are helping you out with this process besides helping the consultant out with the process? I guess a better question would be.
Well, I would tell you that Courtney and Maureen have been instrumental in this process, providing a lot of data. Jen Judkins from the technology department. There's a city person from the GIS. I don't know the name off the top of my head, but the city person has been very responsive to requests. Dave Mastriotti, city technology department, has been providing information.
Again, what we're saying is not Dr. Crowley doing this. It's a team effort with a lot of people involved. So I just want to recognize yourself and the team that are putting it together.
My new administrative assistant was helpful in this work.
I mean, we've had a lot of support from the city side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this has been, they've been readily supportive of the work.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Any additional questions on this document? Yeah, Ms. Sushil.
It's going to be a question that a lot of people would be asking, but just when we get our, whatever we get this week, would there be any kind of number of fifth graders that would be affected by it, like current fourth graders that may want to stay at their school for the final year?
My understanding, again, until I see the full understanding.
Yeah.
But my understanding is you'll see the number of movements. You'll see the number of movements from like this building to this building with counts and grades. So you'll get
we'll
the
get that.
breakdown.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, and it'll clearly label it.
Okay.
From the templates and my understanding of how they'll.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? Mrs. Chisholm's question leads me into an additional area that I think it would be worthwhile for the committee to consider. We are now at the point where we are going to begin looking at some of the options that are presented. Mm-hmm. And I think it would be worthwhile for the committee to discuss and potentially adopt not necessarily very specific goals, but more guiding principles that we would like to keep at the top of our minds as we approach this decision. Mm-hmm. So what I would like to ask the committee first is there support for that process, for building a list of guiding principles that we would use to evaluate the options as we go forward, that we would use as sort of a basis for our deliberations when this is before us. So first, I think I'd like to sort of offer for discussion that question.
I spoke on this last time. I think it would be great to have goals. It keeps us grounded and moving towards what it is we want to accomplish, and then it also allows the public to understand too what it is we would like to accomplish. So I think it makes a lot of sense to have goals. Every good project has goals.
And I do want to clarify, like, in terms of how we were discussing this.
Oh,
certainly
sorry.
there are, and no, it's fine. And there have been goals for
Right.
this project.
Yep.
I think Dr. Crowley outlined them.
Yep.
And I think what I'm asking for more than a set of goals is for the committee to think about which of those are our priorities. Some of those questions, such as the one that Mrs. Chisholm brought up regarding fifth graders. What are some of the things that we would like to see if we can do? Without necessarily making firm commitments, as we need to see how all this plays out. But so that the public understands what our priorities might be moving into this. And so, in that sort of, that vision of this, is that something that the committee feels would be valuable? And if so, we can talk about a process to put that together. Ms. Crouch.
So you're talking about concepts like making sure class sizes are equitable across the district or even lower than they are now. So those classes that have 25 kids, maybe as a district, we would want to get them down lower than that. Okay. So
Broad
just-
statements that talk about what we hope to do as a district with this, rather than very specific benchmarks that we hope to meet. We
Right.
can't necessarily commit to those, but we can talk about sort of broad concepts with this.
Equitable distribution of diverse learners
For example.
instead of concentrated in a few schools. Okay, all right. I'm game.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that as an idea? Mr. Moran.
I can accept the concept you presented, Mr. Chairman. I'm just trying to figure out, so we, come up with kind of thoughts and ideas and goals and objectives. Are we going to just talk about them, or are we going to try to get them to the consultant and say, this is what we're looking for, and he's not on the same page as we are, then where are we?
Well, I think, and I can defer as well to administration on this. The options that we are going to be presented with are not hard and firm options. We can talk about areas that we would like to see adjustment. We can look into things that will allow us to address some of the concerns that we have. So we are not necessarily being asked to adopt one of four options very specifically. I see Ms. Young's face, and I'm curious as to whether or not she is disagreeing with me.
No, I'm thinking, it's, so I think that the way that I think about it is that there are only so many ways that one can fill a building by number of classrooms, and there's only so many ways that you can divide the lines, right? And I think that it's more about, because and I guess I say that my understanding is that when you look at it, like if you start to try to take one and like undo pieces of it, I think that it's going to become difficult. I look at it more as you're going to see a spectrum of options that prioritize things in different ways. I think collectively, the goal of a good redistrict is to have the least number of impacted individuals as possible. Like that's the collective goal. And in some ways, it's more possible in some situations than others. I think that when you look at the different ways and different options of how you redistrict, I think what I gather from your question is that different options are going to do some things better than other things. Some options might do a better job of an equal distribution, while some options might make it so that you're not going to have the neighborhood school feel as much. And so I guess you're going to have to determine to some extent what are the things that matter the most, because you can't get them all, and that you're not going to be able to like take this option and be like, well, I want to get a little bit more of this one and combine them, because then you're not, it probably wouldn't work, right? And so I think that more the way I look at it, and so I apologize for my face, but the more the way that I think about it, it was my signal.
She has a tell.
I've learned.
Yes, I should. Yeah, not a good poker face. But I think that it's more about that you're going to have to look at the options and decide as a kind of what matters most, because you're not going to get all the things.
Right.
And you're going to have to figure out kind of what is the guiding thing that you care about most in terms of how you decide. Because I think what we've recognized early on is that, I mean, the buildings only fit so many people.
Yeah.
I think we're very used to these buildings that have been able to have these bubble rooms, and what this is really trying to do is undo that. And so the set number of rooms is different than how I think about the set number of rooms, right? When we look at the set number of buildings now, like the Reeves is like a 17 classroom school. We're not going to build a 17 classroom school, right? You're going to either you're building 18s, 24s, 12s, and so I think that when you start to divide them up that way, you realize that you know there's only so many ways to kind of slice it.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does, and that I think clarifies the point much better than I had done. So thank you.
You were doing great.
So to sort of come back to that point, right? What I think the way that I'm thinking about this is that we are putting together a statement of the kinds of things that we would prioritize as we look at these options. We may not be able to do all of them, right? We may not be able to operationalize all of them, and that's something that we would have to talk about as we discuss these. But I think it's important for the community and for the committee to, even before we have a look at these options, really think about what's important to us as we're moving into this. Talk about whether those priorities are shared priorities with the committee, or whether those are priorities that one member may have and others do not, so that we can think about what it is that we all are looking for as we go into this, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, Mr. Chairman. Again, to Dr. Crowley's presentation earlier, how the numbers change so rapidly and so quickly. He gave us a number of 350 this week, and here he is putting all this together, hopefully based on, the 350. By the time he compiles all the new information, it could be 375. We don't know that, but it's such a changing dynamic going on. But I think, your concept is great to try to prioritize and get us all on the same page, all going in the same direction. So, whatever we can come up with, make it a working document would be wonderful.
So you reacted when Ms. Chisholm mentioned the fifth graders?
Yeah.
So are you thinking that a guiding principle would be, like, if possible, all fifth graders would stay at their current schools?
That could be
kind
something
of,
that we
like, as a committee.
Or a choice.
Right.
If they choose to
Or
do so.
or a choice. Or, like, when I was looking at the map, we went through it, and there's kids that get on a bus and drive by the Shamrock to get to the
I hear
Goodyear.
it almost once
Oh, yeah.
a week.
And so is that something that the committee would say, like, when we go through this process, we don't want students looking at another school,
Right.
going to another, like, that kind of making
I
it.
wonder if it's even broader, that really what we're looking for is we're looking to reduce buses.
Right.
Like, is it more, I think,
Right.
I look at, like, and I think to what Mr. Mulrennan said, right, I think is it really that you're looking to create buildings where the options for space increases is over time is better? Like, what options provide us with the best opportunities for growth, right? I think my guess is we're looking broader. I think of it like a rubric. Like, what are the items on the rubric that we're looking to score it against?
Yes.
I have one more thought. Just another tension I might see is that the committee could be like, we want to be the most fiscally conservative or save the most money in the redistrict versus what's less disruptive for families. There might be a tension there. I'm not sure. But just kind of thinking things through my mind, I think that I'm guessing the committee would be more on the less disruptive spectrum than, let's do whatever we can to save millions of dollars or something like that. So I'm just like thinking about themes.
And I think that's a good example of something that we can
Yeah.
think about, whether that's, if it is the will of the committee to say that our goal is to choose the most, fiscally, impactful option, or whether it is the will of the committee to choose the option that is going to create the least disruption for our students,
Right.
or a balance of the two, right? That's something that we can state collectively, and use that as use these as benchmarks as we look through our options come mid-May, so that we have a sense of what our collective will is, and apply that to the options before us. And that gives the public, or that would give the public, I think, a clearer sense of our thought process as we evaluate these options together with their input. Ms. Cormier and then Ms. Jones.
I like looking at this with goals and benchmarks. I don't want to make any promises about how it's going to turn, so I don't want folks to think that I just can't say what we're going to be presented with and which way it's going to send us. So I like the lens to look at it through. I just don't want to give anybody false hope on certain things that we end up not being able to do, like the fifth grade.
And I think that's,
And I might have been too specific,
But it's but it's a perfect example of one of the very common things that we've been hearing, and
Right.
a lot of people are concerned about is it's something that we would look at, but we can't say for sure that we're going to absolutely do one thing or the other at this point.
And that's why I think we really do need to think of these as guiding principles, things that we would prefer to focus on, things that we might prioritize, while understanding that we cannot offer promises as we are going into these options. Right? We need to maintain that flexibility. But certainly we have potentially things that the committee can agree on that we would prefer we see, and that might be something we can take a look at as we go forward.
Could be that we just make a list too, not that we vote on things particularly, just spitball.
Mrs. Chisholm.
Well, first of all, I think we need to wait and see what we get first, and maybe we can choose one right off the bat that's going to answer most of our concerns or whatever. And we need to choose a plan that's going to be educationally the best for the system. We should not worry about dollars and cents and what we're going to save. It's going to make it so that we have equitable learning for all of our students, that everybody gets a library, that we don't take away a stage, that this is what we need to do. So I just think that has to be our number one concerns and not the dollars behind it.
So what I would propose, and it sounds as though there's broad support for something that looks like this. Yeah. What I would propose is that, so we have a few different dates in the future that we have identified as potential meeting dates, and Dr. Crowley is going to speak to FY25 in a moment. We had set aside the 30th of April as a potential public hearing for our budget. Mm-hmm. In consultation with the mayor, it appears we're hoping to get a better sense of some of our current questions. So a better sense of what the range of costs and savings associated with redistricting is going to be, any potential other adjustments that we may see in our budget. And so what I think we may do is push off the public hearing. The mayor has indicated that he would be willing to allow us to hold our public hearing a little bit later in the first couple of weeks of May. And keep that 4:30, that next Tuesday date, as a date where we can specifically meet regarding redistricting. We may have options that we have access to at that point, we may not, but we will certainly be able to discuss this sort of set of guiding principles. So what I would ask the committee to potentially support is the idea of transitioning that 4:30 meeting to a meeting on redistricting, and in the interim have members email me thoughts on potential guiding principles that we can then present to the committee for votes and for deliberation and discussion at that 4:30 meeting. Would I have a motion to support that?
There's not a motion, I just have a question. I just want to make sure that we follow the rules and make sure that we meet the deadlines that we have to meet.
Yes.
So if we start with the May 15th deadline that we have to notify personnel by, and then we go back, so we would have to vote our budget, and we'd have to have a public hearing and send it to the mayor prior to, I would say, May 14th.
Yes.
So if we would probably have to have a meeting the week of the 6th to approve that budget, oh no, it would have to go down to City Hall, by the 8th would have to go, we vote by the 14th, we would have to have it the 8th done to go to the library and be public.
So if I can interrupt you for a moment, this was a major topic of conversation. Dr. Crowley, Ms. Young, Ms. Ryan, myself met with the mayor, met with Council President Dillon, met with City Auditor Charlie Doherty today, and we discussed this timeline. One option that came from that City Hall is going to talk about and think about whether it is feasible. We have an existing meeting scheduled for May 14th, and the question is, can we transition that to our public hearing and hold a budget vote meeting the week prior so that we can recommend a budget to public hearing, vote on it on the 14th, and that meets our deadline. City Hall is checking on whether or not the 14th is too close to that deadline to make this work, and they're going to get back to me on that.
I would think it would be too close for it to work for us, because we would have to notify people on the 15th, so that would mean getting a budget and then having our administrators stay up all night and get letters to people the next day. So I don't want to box us into a corner, and even by doing this redistricting, we're not going to know, in one meeting, which one we probably choose, or I don't know if that's going to happen, because we have to allow parents to come before us, and we don't even know what that would save, so what our budget would make a difference. So we just need to be ready to send down a budget that we get at the next meeting.
And I think that's, the goal is to send down a budget that we are most comfortable with whatever additional information we are able to gather in the next week. Regarding redistricting, regarding any other potential adjustments that we might be talking about there. So, I guess this is a multi-part question, but the first part of it regarding redistricting is the meeting next Tuesday.
Okay.
At this point, would we be willing to push off a public hearing to at some point in May at a time that is reasonable to get our budget to City Hall, and use that 4:30 meeting for a redistricting meeting at which we discuss and potentially adopt a list of guiding principles that we are going to use as we assess different options. So if there is a motion, I accept that motion.
I'm not going to propose a motion, but I would have a question if I could. So along with Ms. Chisholm's questions and timeline and whatnot, and again, I'm concerned with, and you've received many, many emails, Mr. Chairperson, so if we would get, something as early as tomorrow from the consultant regarding, the redistrict options, I don't know how it would get to the public that's, expressing interest and concerns, and obviously you had 10 questions tonight, so if that document came out tomorrow, and how do you get it out to the public? How do they get to ask more questions? And will they be able to present, again on the 30th, need be, or is it strictly regarding the consultant's options?
So
I'm willing to sit down on the 30th if we have an agenda, and if the public that's very concerned about a lot of these, are we going to be asked that night to pick an option that we just got a chance to look at? Okay.
No, the 30th would not be to take a vote on redistricting. I think it is really important that we provide the public with many more options to look at the different options before us, to provide that feedback, to have a public forum. We've been talking about potentially having our consultants in for a subcommittee meeting where we can ask them questions, they can respond, the public can be an audience for that as well. So I don't anticipate the 4:30 meeting being a meeting where we are determining which option we are pursuing. It is more a meeting where we can, if we have options that we can take a look at, to do so. If in either way, if we don't, informational updates, and talk about what our priorities are as we go into evaluating those options.
Okay, that's acceptable to myself. And again, you guys, the administration obviously will work with City Hall as far as moving up the deadline and the budget. We're going to talk more budget in a little bit tonight. So, as long as that's cleared off the table and, okay to adjust that timeline accordingly, then I'll be more than happy, I guess, Mr. Chairman, to make the motion that the meeting scheduled for April 30th, Tuesday, April 30th, 7 p.m. school committee meeting will be for the purpose of redistrict update, redistrict information, redistrict.
We can go with update for now.
Update for now, and and that would be. I don't know if you want to add any public comment at that point, or is it just informational purposes?
I think we should absolutely have public comment to the meeting. Yes.
Okay. I'm willing to change eliminate the public hearing because we're not sure where we're going to go with the budget anyway. But if need be, if that night works for folks, for the redistricting informational panel or whatever you want to call it, I can make that motion for you, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All right. On the motion, any discussion?
You guys work out an agenda, whatever you think.
I just appreciate the chair thinking very thoughtfully through this, because if we get something soon, we can have preliminary discussions on the 30th, and more meetings are always better. That's my motto.
Everybody loves it.
Everybody loves them. So
That's why we have an audience.
You miss us that much, huh?
I do.
But
I love all of you.
That's a
And
good closing thought.
When is the resource meeting again?
Well, let's vote on the motion.
But no,
Get
because
the
I think,
guts.
but I think that that's going to be. So I don't think we talk about anything until then.
So,
Oh, yeah.
okay, so let's deal with the motion on the table, and then we can talk about how this is going to impact other timelines going forward. Ms. Watson?
I think it's great that we're holding this meeting next week. I think if we have these plans, it's important that the public sees them and gets to hear them. So as soon as we get them, they should be out there, and public should be able to see them, comment on them, and understand them as they are. And it gives us also more time to digest them and hear public comment and digest that as well. So I think it's great. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion?
So the motion's just changing it from
Changing from the public hearing to a redistricting meeting where we will have public comment. If we have options that are ready for viewing, we can do so. If we don't, we will still be able to at least discuss and adopt potentially guiding principles for how we will evaluate these
and
options.
that's the only thing we're going to do that night.
That would be the sole purpose of the meeting.
So we're forgetting about budget. All right, that's good.
We are not forgetting about budget. Budget is very much on our minds.
We have to
But-
to make some dates, and we have to make a deadline.
Yes.
Our deadlines.
And that's part of the discussions that we had with City Hall today. That is very much
Okay.
a priority. We will be scheduling budget meetings so that we can move this to City Hall and get ourselves a budget.
Okay, so let's vote that.
All right.
Move the motion.
All in favor of adopting the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So we will hold a meeting on April the 30th with redistricting as the sole focus to potentially look at options and certainly to discuss guiding principles. What I would ask is, members, if you have thoughts on what priorities are, what those guiding principles are for you, that you email them to me. I will compile them. I will make sure that they have member names attached so the public knows who's contributing what ideas here. And we can discuss, deliberate on those, and see what we do have in terms of consensus on guiding principles going forward.
Would that be like a running live document that we could check in on, and
It certainly could be.
that way we can sort of get our thoughts? Stu?
Actually, hold on. No, we probably shouldn't.
Because it's like deliberation.
Yeah. What I want to make sure is that we are doing this in a way where we are not running up against any potential OML
Open meeting
violations.
law.
So we can't have this being a document that everyone can view. Think of it similarly to the superintendent evaluation, where you would email the chair thoughts, and then it becomes public at the meeting.
But then any more public, anything else from the public, we'd still get.
Yes, if there's public input, I will be compiling that as I have been.
Perfect.
Okay. So that brings us to our FY25 updates, which we've already done a little bit of.
All right. So I'm going to, I think, suggest that Mr. Dizio, Ms. Young, Ms. Ryan will tag team this. I don't want to speak through all of it. It's been a long day. So anyway, we created a presentation. It's a packet that we can provide to the public relative to our budget to try to make our priorities more transparent for everybody. Rather than it is a number, we know that, but why we get to the number matters, and so we've spent time trying to articulate that, including student artwork. My letter articulates the priorities. In short, our budget includes funding to support our contractual obligations, maintain class sizes and programming, funding for legal commitments, and our growing special ed and multi-language learner support. So it aligns with our strategic vision. And some of this, of course, is going to sound redundant because it is. Our FY25 overview and context, we've talked about the number of students. It's actually not 335, it was 353, so that's increased even since we did this in March. Over the course of the year, our budget drivers, our ESSER funding goes away, the electricity costs have skyrocketed, Our out-of-district tuition went up 14% this current year, and it will go up again next year. Our transportation for special education is budgeted to go up $1 million next year. We're in the last year of our regular ed transportation, so that contract will go out to bid next year. We've seen an increase in our subline this year. We went from $90 to $125 per day, and we had a lot of folks out on various medical and family-related leaves. Our needs related to our increased enrollments, our contractual obligations that, again, negotiated, and so we need to meet them. The priorities that emerged as we've talked through, the TFM just came back. It highlights the need to look at our multilingual and special education population. Our SEL, our students are, that we talk about the GAIN program, which is a special ed program, but we also have students that have trauma that are in regular ed classes, so we need to provide our counseling services, wraparound services, the comprehensive literacy plan, which was alluded to earlier, and school safety initiatives. So this chart, we pulled this just prior to coming in. Our enrollment at approximately 6 o'clock tonight was 4,530 with 14.8% EL population. 24.9% of our students are on IEPs, and 300 students are on 504s. And so, and then on the graph to the right, the term is churn, students coming in and leaving. The churn rate, we've had 568 students enroll, 215 exit, so our net is that 353 that I've been alluding to. And one of the things that I would tell you that we look at, you can see at the lower grades, the numbers of students is higher, 349 in kindergarten, as opposed to 289 graduating. And so the number of students at the lower grades is driving some of this conversation about the need to think about where our students are going to go to school.
I also think it's important that with that larger population in our elementary schools is also, especially with our rise in multilingual learners, that is our highest percentage of students are populated actually our first and second grade classrooms. So when we talk too about increase in staffing, we look at a lot of that support is really going towards elementary level.
Again, this is, I don't want to be redundant, but we passed the budget last June, I believe, at City Hall, and we've added positions since July. And so the positions we've added, the newly arrived students that came in September, we've added ML teachers. We've added 5 paras, the reading specialist, the teen chair, transitional ed, GAIN teacher, and the HR director. So that's where we are today. And so we use that arguably as our starting point in the budgeting process. And I'm going to see if Mr. Dizzio wants to take a stab here.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Crowley. I think you hit on a lot of the key ones here. One that I'll definitely point out is that you'll see when you look at the budget drivers, almost 50% of that is salary driven. That's due largely to some contract settling within the past couple months. So when I say that, that's you're almost seeing like a 3-year catch up where those COLAs didn't take place before. Those are catching up over a 3-year period. So that is a significant driver for that. As Dr. Crowley mentioned, the ESSER funds are going away, but the need for them isn't, so that's getting absorbed in the budget elsewhere. We saw increases in special education contractually with out of districts and transportation. Homeless and gen ed transportation is increasing. And as he alluded to on the substitute line increase, our cost went up from $90 to $125 per day. And those are some of the biggest budget drivers that we're seeing.
Alex, on the homeless transportation,
Yep.
is the amount going to be 400,000, or was it increased to?
So both of those are going up 200,000. For homeless transportation, it's going to be 400,000.
And the substitute line increases?
Yep.
What will the new total be? I just couldn't.
800,000.
800, okay, because we're already at almost 7 now.
Yeah, so part of that's, budgeting more accurately
Right.
as a result of that increase in the
Okay.
daily rate.
Total 800.
Okay. Trying to get that pulled up on this, it's like, yeah, no.
So, Ms. Ryan, the special ed supplemental budget?
Sure. So the out-of-district tuitions, you can see that we have planned for approximately $12.5 million. That budget line, I think it's on the later slide, but you'll see that it is made up of a line in the operating budget, and then there are offsets, which include circuit breaker, 240 grant, and the city will be getting 1.8 million on the city side as we did this past year. The special education transportation, the contract that SEAM holds with NRT is currently in the bidding process. I'm hoping it will be finalized soon. But we have, special education transportation is very, very difficult to plan, especially when the contract isn't finalized. We've done our best, and we increased that line to account for our best projection with that. And our vision and hearing needs are continuously going up due to a variety of reasons. We have an increase in students that have the need for vision services, as well as challenges with actually securing vision services makes it just, it costs more, essentially. And our extended school year program, we have more students that are attending, and the students that are attending have increased needs, and so there's greater staffing that is needed to safely and appropriately run the program. So that's why you see an increase in it. That's why it's to accurately reflect what the needs are for the summer.
Mr. Dizio?
Yep. And then looking at what composes the current proposed FY25 budget, again, common theme that you'll see, and this is probably true of any school and probably true of most companies, 75% of the current proposed budget is salary-driven. Another 18% of that is other contractual obligations, transportation, utilities, out-of-district tuitions. And the whole point in saying this is to point out that only about 7% of the budget, as is for supplies and other operational costs, including facilities and technologies.
Sure.
Additionally, in that was handed out, you have the chart with the positions. This took off the positions that we have, as in the building substitutes, things we have previously. And I'll just get through all of them. So the first that is you'll see is the increase in team chairs. Ms. Ryan's talked about this before. This is really looking especially at our TFM report, but also with the new IEP, recognizing that with that time, there needs to be more team chairs that are dedicated to building-based. And so this will be getting us to building-based team chairs in all buildings and a shared one at the Alta Vista instead. We also, again, won the TFM report as well as additional, I guess, in conversations with our with our district consultants in terms of our resource room services, looking at an increase of resource room teachers. And so those are kind of our two big buckets there. An increase in our multilingual learners. And again, we've talked a lot about how the results of our tiered monitoring has really driven a lot of these positional ads. And so the bulk of the ads is really looking at the addition of the team chairs, the resource room teachers, and our multilingual learner teachers. Additionally, we're adding another SOAR room. We've talked a lot about the GAIN program and its growth tonight, but I think that also recognizing the SOAR program that we put in 2 years ago, that we started off as 1 classrooms and 2 classrooms, where now this will be opening up the 4th classroom, and with that is a teacher and 2 paraprofessionals, as well as looking at the increase. The SOAR program is being built out into the middle schools. We have 1 SOAR teacher at the Kennedy now. This would be adding an additional classroom there. We have a large number of incoming kindergarten RISE students, and so this is opening an additional RISE kindergarten classroom at Shamrock. This is also now opening, since we moved RISE 2 to the Hope Lyman, that program, and as students are aging, we are looking into opening another RISE 2 program. Since moving the RISE 2 program to the Hope Lyman, as we need to ensure that we have enough nurse support. This is adding an additional nurse. The program, and we talked a little bit about it at the previous school committee meeting, but as we're really looking for ways to be increasing our inclusive practices, we have our 2 co-taught classrooms that were, this year we funded that through fellows through Endicott, and now we'll be looking to maintain that. And then we are looking at a clinical psychologist that would be added to the Goodyear, primarily looking at the GAIN program. And then we'd be looking to, again, as a result of our TFM, looking at increasing to a special education coordinator at the high school, leaving us as an elementary special education coordinator, a middle school, and a high school, as well as a mental health coordinator for the district.
The only clarification that I would make is the nurse that is currently listed at the Pearl Lyman may actually be shared a little bit depending on the special education needs in the program. So it's not necessarily only a Pearl Lyman. It is 1 FTE as an additional nurse.
And so, our budget currently rests at 13.39%, I believe. And so that, we wanted to just provide some color, if you will, to a number. And we look forward to discussing this. We have a finance meeting Friday, I believe, so we'll talk further at that point.
All right. Any budget-related questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry.
Okay. No, on the budget, do we have dates? Because this is what I don't know why we can't get dates, because we need to be able to just set dates night. I don't know if everybody has every night free, but some of us do have a life outside
I think we can. We were just waiting to get through the other thing.
God forbid that we have like something to do. And that's my concern, is we keep not wanting to talk about budget and sending a budget down or committing to a budget. It's only kicking the can down the hall. We're not going to know on redistricting by May 14th or May 10th when we have to actually vote this. We won't have a number. So I don't know why at 13.39 we just don't call it a day.
So what, in our conversations with the mayor, part of this budget includes a placeholder for redistricting that is currently set at $500,000. What we are talking about with the mayor is that once we have options presented before us, we will be able to make a better estimate. That is an estimate that is our best look at a conservative estimate right now, but we may be able to get a finer tuned figure once we see options from the consultant. So in consultation with the mayor, we decided we could hold off at least a little bit until we have a better adjustment there that will give us as close to a number we can be totally comfortable with as possible. So we are waiting to make sure that the estimate that we have in the budget on redistricting is the best estimate that we can offer before we send one down. We anticipate that those will be within the next week. And so what I'm asking the committee is that we take that into account. We schedule a budget hearing or a budget meeting for early May for an eventual public hearing within the time frame that allows us to get it to City Hall.
Okay, so.
And so part of the conversation with the mayor and with the city auditor today was on what date would work. So we are currently discussing whether or not that May 14th date can work. If it can, then we can.
I don't think it could work for us. I don't think we should put that kind of burden on administration. I mean, we cannot vote something the 14th and then expect the letters to go out the next day. I mean, we went through this last year and everybody was hooting and hollering about it. Now it's just like silence has risen. And we have to be able to get a date. And it was April 26th last year that we got, and we still don't have a date. So or a number to push forward. And I mean, if we're going to do something, we got to do something, but let's set a date for maybe next week, vote the budget, and let's move on. It's either up or down. And we're not going to have a number to reduce the redistricting when we don't have a redistricting plan accepted. So how are we going to do that? If we get handed the stuff from the council, the guy that's going to come to see us May 8th or whatever that's going to be, we won't know the dollars that are going to be affected by that because we won't have voted it. Right. So we're not going to be able to do that and give a best guess until we actually know what we're doing.
The goal right now, we are understanding that we cannot provide the exact figure.
Right.
So we are looking for the best estimate that we can put forward. And the best estimate we can put forward is the one that we have after we've seen the options that are going to be presented to us, hopefully this week.
Okay.
Ms. Crowley.
Through the chair, I agree with Ms. Chisholm. Maybe we could look at, so it sounds like we'll be looking at around May 5th for a vote the budget to release to the public. And then we need a week. Is that right? Or
3 days to be to the public.
Oh, okay. All right. So it looks like we're looking at May 5th-ish, and then maybe May 13th, because that would deal with Ms. Chisholm's concerns that May 14th is cutting it too close, and also is addressing the mayor's concerns that he wants the latest date possible, I guess, in some ways, because he probably needs to work some numbers with his auditor, I'm guessing. So could we do I don't know. So given that.
The 5th is a Sunday, so.
That poses a slight problem.
I was like,
It's like, we love all of you,
Could.
however.
So maybe the 6th and the 13th. How's that?
Feels bad.
So
All right.
2 Monday nights, we'll throw everybody a curve.
Yes. How's that sound for everybody?
That is available for me.
Okay, so May 6th, we will vote budget.
Okay.
Be just budget.
Okay, good.
So we will set a motion to create a meeting on May the 6th for the purpose of voting a budget to send down to City Hall. Do I have that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, any discussion on the motion?
And then the one on the.
All in favor of the motion?
I have a question on
Okay,
that.
yes.
So then the 13th would be after it's that meeting on the 6th. It then goes down to the library, goes online, whatever. And then on the 13th, we have public comment, public hearing, and then we vote officially that
That's
day.
correct.
Okay. So when you said it goes down to City Hall, you
That-
mean out and about? Okay.
All right.
Cool.
So, all in favor of adopting May 6th as a budget meeting to vote on a final budget?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay. And that would then bring us to the public hearing. I would accept a motion to...
I will make a motion for May 13th. It's Monday at 7 p.m.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on that motion?
No.
Okay. Hearing. All in favor of holding a public hearing on May the 13th?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So we will hold a budget meeting on May the 6th. We will vote a budget to advance to public hearing, and we will hold that public hearing on May the 13th.
So do we still need the 14th?
So in that case, I think, why don't we hold on to that meeting? That can be a potential redistricting update or potential action. All right. So we have many a meeting scheduled.
How lucky.
Would anyone like to propose any additional meetings? Take a look at it. Good? Okay. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could, I know it was a quick presentation over tonight's budget. I guess I'll turn to Mr. Giglio. It was indicated to us that, obviously it's been said over and over again, these are, 3-year contractual obligations. And again, I do this every year for those people that have been indulging me for years and years and years. We don't have a lot of control over these things. Miss Ryan down there, transportation, it might change day to day for her. Out of district tuitions, out of district transportation. So I think, my point to Mr. Giglio would be, here we have, and again, I'm glad you made a reference to a business. Supplies and other operational materials. Again, thinking about the entire school district, Mr. Giglio and others, 4.4%. That's not a very big number. The supplies and other operational materials. I'm not talking about anything redistricting-wise. I'm not talking about, it boggles my mind to sit here tonight and look at these numbers and look at, the number we may be presenting down to City Hall, that, transportation, 7.1, out of district, salaries, custodial, supplies and other operational materials. And again, and I guess a question to the administration, what does that encounter? What would you consider supplies and other operational materials to our families in our district, in our district today? It's just such a small little number, and all the others we have no control over, but that one, is such a, it's just one of those things that jumps out at me like, wow, 4.4%? Oh, look at everything else is way up there. So I just wanted to make that point. And again, we haven't got a number down to City Hall yet. We have, one council member with us here diligently each night, listening to our concerns and our, dilemma that we're up against. But obviously, if and when the budget, all these meetings go down, and we come with a number that we want to send down to City Hall, I would encourage the public to, try to contact their council members as well as the mayor's office to support whatever number we have down there. We haven't dealt with this mayor, for a budget as of yet, what we're going to have, we're not going to have, but it seems to be very willing to listen to us. It seems as though it's very cordial what you guys are trying to do among the redistricting factor as well. So, obviously, we hear from the public about redistricting. We really need to hear about the budget when we get the number down to City Hall. Notify your councilman and your councilman at large, as well as the mayor's office, to please support whatever budget the school department presents to the city. And that's my little spiel for this year. And again, the supply is just 4.4% for supplies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Unless there's anything else there.
No, meetings to do more about that.
So we can move into subcommittee reports. Finance and personnel.
We're meeting on Friday.
Okay. Community relations.
No meeting now.
And I do want to also just mention for the public, we did ask subcommittees to pause as we discussed the budget and now also redistricting. So when you're hearing people say we have not met, know that is by design, that we are trying to make sure that administration has the time to focus on the budget and redistricting that they need. Curriculum and data trends.
Have not met, Mr. Chairman?
Policy subcommittee.
We will be meeting on Friday, 4/26, here at the Joyce at 7:45 a.m. But side note, I also wanted to mention, Mrs. Chisholm brought up the overnight and out-of-state field trips. And according to our policy, it says all out-of-state or extended overnight trips and excursions, except those required for student participation in tournament, competition, or contests, must have advance approval of the school committee. Obviously, we all approved it, so it's a moot point. But if it is, even if it is out of state and overnight, if it is a tournament, it still does not need us to approve it.
Okay, thank you. So policy will be meeting on Friday.
7:45.
Okay.
A.m.
Resources and capital planning.
No, we do not meet.
And student services and achievement.
We haven't met yet, but we do have a meeting scheduled for May 17th at 8:45 a.m. That's a Friday. And then just a couple things to note. The CPAC is holding their virtual meeting on May 7th at 7 p.m. And then Jan Fuller from the Commission on Disabilities sent me a flyer, and it's about a youth leadership forum. It's June 23rd through the 28th at Emerson College, and it's for, it's great. It's free as well, and it's for ages 16 to 22, and it's through Partners for Youth with Disabilities. And it'll be held in Massachusetts as well as other states. So I just got that flyer today, and she asked that I bring it up. I'm happy to also share the flyer out.
Please. Thank you. All right.
That's it. Thank
And that brings us to our newest subcommittee, the Woburn Building and Capital Planning Subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My computer died, so I can't pull up my minutes, and you're all sad. But I just want to inform the public that the building committee met on April 13th on a Saturday, and we toured all the buildings and had a quick debrief after that. So we are actively engaged with the conditions of the buildings. I want to thank the building committee for being awesome, because they are. And so I will get more depth with my minutes at the next meeting, Mr. Chair.
And I was
Sorry,
able to tag along on the building tour. It was eye-opening, as always, and I
Yes.
think the members of the building committee, it was a very valuable day,
Certainly was.
especially for those folks who have not been in our buildings and not to that degree, able to poke around the boilers and see the storage facilities and all, everything. And so that, I think, was a really valuable experience, so thank you. In terms of correspondence, a moment, I am also having minor technical issues. We did receive some correspondence since our last meeting. We received a lovely thank you message from Ms. Carrie Vesquisi thanking us for adopting the health curriculum. We got a heads up from the city clerk that Student Government Day will be on Tuesday, June 11th. Just a quick note for the public, and I received several communications regarding our graduation date. The newspaper had a misprint of what our graduation date was. It listed it initially as June 7th in a recent article. We voted that date on May 31st. I did communicate with the newspaper to try to get that corrected both in print and online. I believe it has been corrected online. So just for the public's sake, the graduation date will be May the 31st. We received a question regarding both the timeline for redistricting and questions on whether our consulting firm has had experience with this type of timeline from Ms. Caitlin Skinner. Dr. Crowley, do you want to talk about the donation of the Alta Vesta?
Sure. The Alta Vesta received a $2,000 donation from Nancy Solis to the library. The library is dedicated to her son, and so she was gracious enough to offer that donation, which I accepted on behalf of the committee, and just wanted to say thank you to her for her generous donation to the Alta Vesta Library.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that the chair write a letter of thank you on behalf of the school committee.
I will certainly do
Second.
that. All right. Thank you very much. I will make a note of that right now. All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, yes.
Aye.
With the phone.
I stepped in.
Thank you. I
Don't worry,
appreciate
I
it.
covered that for you.
I
The
kind
vice
of
chair.
figured that's how it would go.
Vice chair
but,
step.
All right. Let's see. We received communication from Ms. Erin Sanchez regarding Linscott playground equipment. I've tried to follow up on basically looking for the model of playground equipment to search for potentially some replacement parts. So we're following up with that.
And for that, building and grounds should have that.
Yeah, that's I'm having that forwarded along as well. It's also possible that Mr. Wells might be aware of that, former Linscott principal. And then finally, we received communication from Ms. Rachel Kuberry regarding an information request she put in for the contract with the consultant, which did answer several questions that she had as well. So I don't know if any other committee members received any correspondence. Nope. Okay. If future agenda items, we have plenty of meetings scheduled, so I think we're good there, but if there's anything else people wanted to toss in there, Mr. Moran.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I know we've got a handful of meetings coming up with different, agenda items, but I think it might be wise of us to invite School Resource Officer Ed Fumacello in one of those meetings coming up. He's retiring at the end of this school year. Just have Ed in, congratulate him on his time with us over the years, and wish him a great retirement if he's available to come at, his convenience or our convenience. I know we've got a couple of full agendas items coming up, but it'd be nice to just recognize Ed for his years and years of service to us as a school resource officer.
I appreciate that. I will make a note of it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right. And that brings us to the end of our regular agenda. I'm sorry, Ms. Young.
Sure. I just wanted to take the opportunity to remind that all entering kindergarten families that the kindergarten parent orientation for all entering kindergarten students will be May 8th at 6 p.m. at the high school. And a remind went out last week. We'll send out another remind. And we're asking for anyone who would like to submit questions beforehand. And then also in that was that we will be holding popsicles on the playground and events towards the end of August, as well as we'll be sending out more information for families looking to visit their schools, but we will have translation services provided, as well as all of our building principals there. So.
That's great. Thank you very much for that.
Tanner
All right.
Tanner Fest coming up.
And yes, we have Tanner Fest coming up this Saturday on August 27th. Yes, among my favorite events of the whole
April 27th.
Yeah, you only wish.
It's been a long day here. So, April 27th for Tanner Fest. I hope to see everyone there. It is a wonderful event. All right, so at this time, we do have executive session on the agenda. So I would ask for a vote to enter executive session.
So moved. That motion.
For the purpose.
For the purposes of